Joining me now is Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, who serves on the Senate Armed Services Committee. He also is a former Republican presidential candidate, of course. Senator, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
So, EgyptAir, the flight. What are you hearing? What is your gut?
Well, really, we haven't been briefed. At least Intel people have, but I doubt that an average member of Congress has been briefed. I met with the Egyptian ambassador yesterday and passed on my condolences. If it is terrorism, and nobody knows, there's no use to guess, but the first question I have is who did it and what kind of capability do they bring to the fight? Because you're no stronger than your weakest link when it comes to flying and, you know, loading an airplane with luggage and food, but they made multiple stops. So the question I would have is what kind of capability did they possess? Because this is a fairly sophisticated thing to do.
Well, and as you said, if it is terrorism, you've got a lot more questions, and it has huge implications for the world that we live in right now. And that is something that you speak directly about all the time, the threat of terrorism and what that means both abroad and here at home. It's something that the next president is going to have to deal with, something that you talked about on the campaign trail very much. You talked recently about ISIS, about the threat of terror with Donald Trump when you spoke to him on the phone. Even the phone call surprised a lot of people. That you get on the phone with him surprised me. You called it pleasant. With all of this in mind, I wonder, I want to talk about the foreign policy position, but just having the call with him and what you spoke with him about, are you warming to Donald Trump?
Well, I will talk to him. I mean, we have major differences when it comes to immigration, and I think he's taken the party down a road that I choose not to go. But, you know, he's got a 50-50 chance of being president of the United States. He did an amazing thing. He beat me and, 16 other people. The bottom line is he wanted to pick my brain about ISIL. The threat, look at ISIL as a threat to the homeland. Look at it as a threat to the region. Now, how do you protect us from ISIL? The more you can disrupt their operations, the smaller you can make the group. They're large, they're rich, they're entrenched. I want to make them small, poor, and on the run. And I talked about the Iranian influence in Damascus through Assad, that we have two challenges in Syria. And Syria is the cancer of the Mideast. Is you cannot give Damascus to the Iranians by keeping Assad in power. The Arabs won't accept that, and if you don't deal with ISIL, they're going to hit us here.
So that is a very important point that you're making, especially right now, because it seems that while you talked about that with Donald Trump, he says that he disagrees with you on that point. He talked about you just this morning. He was on Morning Joe, and he said specifically on the point of the U.S. approach to ISIS in Syria, he disagrees with you. He would stay out of Syria, and he would not fight for Assad to go. For our viewers, here's what Donald Trump said.
We have Iran and we have Russia totally on the side of Assad. And that's not the reason I stay out necessarily, but certainly it's a complicating factor. But we have them totally on the side of Assad. We have to knock the hell out of ISIS. And if we're going after Assad and ISIS and they're fighting each other, people are going to say, what the hell are we doing?
So, Senator, this speaks to a broader foreign policy. This speaks to a broader foreign policy view. From what you hear, do you think he is ready to be commander-in-chief?
Well, we can disagree about, well, Ted Cruz said it's okay to leave Assad in power. I respectfully disagree. Assad is the magnet for recruitment for ISIL. He's an Alawite in the Shia strain of the religion backed by Iran. He's a proxy of the Iranians. The Sunni Arab states, Saudi Arabia and all the Gulf Arab states, are not going to accept Assad staying in power because you're giving Damascus to Iran. ISIL uses Assad as a recruiting tool. So here's what I would say to Mr. Trump. If you leave Assad in power, then you're expanding the Iranian influence, which is not in our interest, and the war in Syria never ends because the 250,000 people who have been killed have family members. They'll never accept Assad staying in power and being president even of a portion of Syria.
But if you completely disagree with what he just said and his approach, what does that say to his readiness in your mind to be commander-in-chief? As you said, there's a 50-50 shot here.
Well, but he does make a good point. Russia and Iran have doubled down for Assad. What I would do is look at ISIL as Germany and Assad as Japan. I would get the Arab world to do most of the fighting because it's in their interest to destroy ISIL as well as ours. But we'd also have to put military pressure on the Assad regime to get the Russians to reconfigure here. I don't think Russia will go to war to keep Assad in power. They just want some influence in Syria. The big mistake Obama made was drawing a line red line against Assad. Assad crossed it. He used chemical weapons. He's still standing. The Russians saw that as weakness, and when they intervened on Assad's behalf, it made Syria much more complicated. But to Mr. Trump and others, you'll never end the war in Syria if you leave Assad in power. The Syrian people won't accept it. The Arabs won't accept it. And ISIL is a direct threat to our homeland.
And this is why I'm pushing you on this, because I look back at things you said in the debates and what you said when you came out and you said you would not vote for him as president. You said that you've said he clearly doesn't understand the war against ISIS and how to win it. You said when he made his foreign policy speech, Reagan would be rolling over in his grave. You said that he does not have the temperament to serve as commander-in-chief. Do you stick by that?
Well, my criticism has been wide and it's been deep, but we did have a good conversation. He asked good questions, and I think he's reconsidering a little bit about what to do in Syria. I don't know if Hillary Clinton's much. What will Hillary Clinton do different than President Obama? President Obama has no strategy to destroy ISIL.
Right now, do you think Donald Trump is more qualified to be commander-in-chief than Hillary Clinton?
Well, at the end of the day, that's up to the American people. What I see is a failed strategy under President Obama that's pretty much been adopted by Hillary
Senator,
Clinton.
you are not a man to mince words. Why is it uncomfortable when I ask you that question?
It is uncomfortable to say that somebody's not qualified who beat you. So the bottom line here is the American people need to choose wisely. What will Hillary Clinton do different than Barack Obama? The people we're training in Syria will never be able to take Raqqa back from ISIL because they're Kurds. They're not Arabs. So the strategy to destroy the caliphate inside of Syria is a false strategy. It's crippling and hurting ISIL, but it will not destroy ISIL. And Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama seem to have no strategy at all when it comes to Iran. They basically dominate 4 Arab capitals, and the Arabs are tired of this.
What was your gut reaction when you heard that Donald Trump said he would have no problem talking to Kim Jong-un?
Big mistake, because every other dictator in the world is going to look at you differently. The last thing you want to do is empower this guy in North Korea. Donald's right to say that China is the key to North Korea, but I think it would be a mistake for the President of the United States to meet directly with this butcher. I would focus on China. And to Mr. Trump, you better come up with a strategy in Syria. To Hillary Clinton, you better come up with a strategy different than we have today in Syria, or we're going to get attacked here. This airliner should be a wake-up call, if it is terrorism, that capabilities among terrorists to do sophisticated attacks have not been diminished. And my big fear is that they're coming here. The longer they stay in power, the more land they control, the more fighters they recruit, the more likely we're going to get hit. And my goal would be to destroy this caliphate sooner rather than later, and I don't see a plan to do it coming from anybody, quite frankly.
Do you think, you said very clearly, you don't know if it's terror yet. Do you think Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton jumped the gun by both coming out saying it looks like terror, they think it's terror?
I think if I had to guess, it'd be terrorism, but I don't see where we benefit guessing, because this is too important. I just want to get back to my message here. I've always said that we needed more capability on the ground in Iraq and Syria. 8 to 10,000 American troops in Iraq helping the Iraqis, 8 to 10,000 American troops helping a large regional army in Syria. We don't have that.
Donald Trump says he wouldn't even be in Iraq either.
Well, that would be a big mistake, because Iraq is a safe haven for ISIL. Here's what I would tell Mr. Trump. Any place.
Was this part of your conversation, just for so I get this in my head?
But he asked really good questions. I must say that he reached out, number one, and I was glad to talk to him. To destroy ISIL, you have to take the land away from them, and you have to look with who you have to work with. The Iraqis do not have the ability by themselves to take Mosul back, which is going to be a city of almost 1 million people. To Mr. Trump and to Hillary Clinton, it is in our national security interest not only to destroy ISIL, but to hold the territory after they're destroyed so they don't come back. That means we have to have some presence over there to keep them from coming here.
You have a lot more work ahead for you on that front if you want to get Donald Trump to listen to you. At least it sounds like that today. Can you give me your assessment of what's happening on the Democratic side? When we talk about vitriol in a primary, it being a bloody and brutal primary, we think of the Republican primary that you know so well. When you saw what happened in Nevada at that convention, Barbara Boxer coming on here saying that she feared for her safety, and then folks afterwards saying that Bernie Sanders is hurting Hillary Clinton by staying in the race. Do you think that's true?
Well, I don't know if he's hurting Hillary Clinton, but if I was a Bernie Sanders supporter, I'd be pretty upset. There's no excuse for violence. You have to channel your being upset. You have to channel your energy in a proper fashion. But when you win a primary by 13 and 15 points and you pick up 5 delegates, What kind of system is that? I can understand how the Bernie people are upset. He's going to wind up winning 19 in the last 25 contests, and he seems to be making no progress toward, you know, becoming the nominee. They'll probably come together. I don't know. We've got our problems inside the Republican Party, but I tell you, this division in the Democratic Party worries me as an American. I can see a version of the Tea Party being formed in the Democratic Party from the left, going after moderate Democrats who won't toe the line toward a socialist agenda, and you're going to wind up not being be able to do anything. If the Democratic Party begins to declare war on their more moderate centrist candidates through the Bernie mechanism, then how do you ever solve any problem inside of Congress? That's a real concern of mine, and you see that split beginning to emerge.
Senator, it's always great to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really, really appreciate it. A lot more to discuss, but Senator, we don't have all day.
We don't.
So thank you very much for your time.